How long can a woman love someone who makes her feel invisible before she starts to disappear? For Eva James, the answer was 11 months. 11 months of canceled dinners. One-word texts. A husband who slept on the edge of the bed like he was waiting to leave. A second anniversary she spent alone at a table she set herself, in a dress she bought for him, eating food she cooked for two. 11 months, and then her best friend hired a stripper. Somebody posted a 47-second video, and Eva's billionaire husband drove across the city at 1 a.m. because for the first time in almost a year, he was afraid. Not of losing his company. Not of the secret he had been carrying for 18 months, the secret that was, at that exact moment, about to walk up to Eva's front door and ring the bell. Afraid of losing her. The problem? He was about 11 months too late to be afraid of the right thing. Watch what happens next. I promise you, you're not ready.
So let's dive in. See you at the end.
Chapter 1. The crown was already on her head before Derek Miles rang the doorbell. That was the first thing he saw when Brianna Lewis swung the front door open. Eva James, sitting cross-legged on a cream leather couch in a plush bathrobe and fuzzy socks, a bowl of sour cream chips balanced on her knee, wearing a plastic rhinestone crown like it had always belonged there. Derek blinked. He had done a lot of private events. Birthday parties. Bachelorettes. Corporate nights that started formal and ended with the CFO doing the electric slide. He had never walked into a living room and found the guest of honor already crowned and completely unbothered. She gave herself the crown, Brie announced, stepping aside to let him in. I brought it for later. She put it on 20 minutes ago. Eva looked up from her chips. It felt like a crown night, she said simply, and popped another chip in her mouth. Derek pressed his lips together to keep from laughing. He was a professional. He lasted 4 seconds before he lost it completely. That was how the evening began, with Derek laughing in the doorway, Brie already recording on her phone, and Eva James looking between the two of them with the calm, unbothered energy of a woman who had absolutely nothing left to prove to anybody. What followed was the kind of night that doesn't happen often enough. Derek set up his speaker in the middle of the living room and launched into a full performance, part comedian, part entertainer, part one-man show. He did impressions. He did a dramatic reading of a text argument Brie had with her neighbor about a parking spot. He attempted a magic trick that failed so spectacularly that Eva slid completely off the couch and onto the floor and stayed there for a full minute, crying with laughter, crown still on her head, chips scattered everywhere. I am a professional, Derek announced, collecting the scattered cards from his failed trick with enormous dignity. You're not, Brie said flatly, phone still recording. I am adjacent to professional. Eva was still on the floor. I can't breathe, she wheezed. I genuinely cannot breathe. That's the goal, Derek said, bowing. Brie helped Eva back onto the couch, and for the next 2 hours the living room was loud and warm and completely, unapologetically alive. Derek told stories. Brie interrupted every single one. Eva laughed until her face hurt, laughed until she forgot to hold herself carefully the way she had been holding herself for months, laughed with her whole body in the free and unguarded way that a person only laughs when they have completely stopped caring what they look like. It was the most fun she had experienced in 2 years. Not 2 weeks. Not 2 months. 2 years. She did not let herself think about that too hard. Not tonight. Tonight she was going to be the woman in the crown on the floor with the scattered chips and nothing else. But the living room had a dining area just beyond it, and if you looked past the laughter and the speaker and Derek's third failed magic trick, if you looked past all of it, you could see the table. It was still set for 2. White plates, the good ones. 2 candles, burned all the way down to flat discs of wax, never lit because she had eventually stopped waiting and blown them out herself. A vase of flowers she had arranged that morning, yellow roses because they were his favorite, now leaning slightly at the neck the way flowers do when nobody has touched the water in 24 hours. The reservation had been for 7:30. He had texted at 7 to say he was running behind. At 9 to say he was sorry. He had come home at 11, said he forgot, and gone straight to the shower. Eva had sat at that table alone in her good dress and eaten the meal by herself. She had not cried. She had finished the food and blown out the candles and folded her napkin and gone to bed. And when he finally came and lay down on his edge of the mattress, she had kept her breathing steady and her eyes closed and said nothing at all. That was yesterday. This was today. And today she was on her couch in her crown eating chips with Bree and Derek, and she was laughing, and it was real, and it was enough. It had to be enough. Near midnight, Derek took a theatrical final bow, collected his speaker, shook Bree's hand, told Eva she was an absolute queen and the crown was non-negotiable, and she should wear it always. I plan to, she said. He left. The room was quieter without him, but still warm. Bree dropped onto the couch beside Eva and pulled out her phone. I'm posting the video, she said. Eva waved her hand. Post it. Bree typed the caption without hesitating. She remembered who she was tonight. Posted it. Set her phone face down. The two of them sat there in the comfortable quiet of 30 years of friendship, crowns still on Eva's head, chips still on the floor, melted candles still on the table behind them. At 1 a.m., Bree's phone lit up with notifications. At 1 a.m., across the city, in a dark office where a man had been sitting behind a desk for 16 hours, a different phone lit up with the same video. He watched it once, then again, then twice more. And in the quiet of that office, something shifted in him, sudden and sharp and unnamed, like a man who just realized he left something irreplaceable behind and can't remember exactly when. What time are you watching this? Drop it in the comments below, because what happens next? Nobody, and I mean nobody, saw it coming. Chapter 2. Now let's take it back all the way to the beginning. He asked her name twice. Not because the hallway was loud. It wasn't. The hotel corridor was almost completely quiet, just the low hum of an air conditioning unit and the distant sound of an elevator somewhere below them. He heard her perfectly the first time. He just wanted to hear it again. Eva, she had said, the second time, with a small look that told him she knew exactly what he was doing. Still Eva. Hasn't changed in the last 10 seconds. The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Close enough. His name was Junho Shin. He was doing a quiet walkthrough of the Charlotte Meridian, one of 11 hotels his company owned across the United States. He had no assistant with him, no entourage, no schedule visible to anyone on the floor. He had gotten turned around looking for the third-floor conference room, a fact he found mildly embarrassing and chose not to announce, and then a woman had appeared at the end of the corridor in a lanyard and a paint-stained cardigan, eating a granola bar, and asked him if he was lost. He was. He said so. She laughed, not unkindly, and walked him there herself. The conference room was a 3-minute walk. They talked for 40 minutes. She was chaperoning a middle school art trip. 12 students, 2 other teachers, 1 parent volunteer who had already lost a child in the gift shop. She talked about her students the way people talk about things they genuinely love, with detail, with humor, with the particular warmth of someone who shows up because they want to, not because they have to. She talked about a boy in her class who could only draw horses, exclusively horses, every single assignment, and how she had redesigned an entire unit around him until the horses became something extraordinary. Junho had been in meetings for 9 hours. He had shaken 40 hands and remembered none of the names attached to them. He stood in a hotel corridor and listened to a woman in a paint-stained cardigan talk about a boy and his horses and felt, for the first time that entire day, like he was in an actual conversation. He asked her to dinner before he had fully decided to. She said yes before he finished asking. That was the beginning. What came after was the kind of relationship that builds quietly and holds firmly, the kind that doesn't announce itself, but simply becomes the structure everything else rests on. He flew to Memphis every other weekend. Not to impress her, not to make a gesture. Just to be there. He sat on her mother's porch and ate food he had never tasted before, and said very little and listened to a great deal. And Miss Dorothy watched him with the careful eyes of a woman who had spent 40 years reading people in church pews and knew exactly what she was looking at. That man is carrying something he hasn't told anybody about, she said to Eva one evening after he had gone back to his hotel. Mama, he's just quiet. There's quiet and there's quiet, Miss Dorothy said, and did not elaborate. The proposal was at the kitchen table. No restaurant, no crowd, no choreography. Just him across from her with a ring he said he chose himself, and 4 words before the question. I know what I want. Eva said yes before he finished. Bree, in the next room with her ear against the wall, screamed loud enough to be heard 3 houses down. Miss Dorothy said, Lord have mercy, and went to lie down. The first year of marriage was good. Genuinely, solidly good. He was not an effusive man. He didn't leave love notes or talk about his feelings the way Eva did, but he was present, and presence was its own language, and she had learned to read it. He came home for dinner. He remembered the small things. He reached for her hand in the car without thinking about it, the automatic gesture of a man who simply wanted to be touching the person next to him. Then, so slowly she couldn't name the moment it started, he stopped. First, the dinners. He texted to say he was running late and she kept the food warm. Then he texted to cancel and she ate alone. Then he stopped texting at all and she just stopped cooking. The hand in the car stayed in his lap. The questions about her day dried up. The bed became a place with 2 separate edges and a middle that neither of them crossed. She tried. She cooked the meals he loved. She planned a weekend trip to Asheville, hiking, a cabin, the mountain air she knew he found calming, and he canceled the morning of with 2 sentences and no real explanation. She sat him down at the kitchen table and told him plainly, calmly, that she felt like she was disappearing inside their marriage and she needed him to talk to her. He said, I hear you, Eva. Nothing changed. She started to wonder if she had imagined who he was. If the man in the Memphis hotel corridor, the one who asked her name twice, who flew across the country just to sit on her mama's porch, had ever been real, or if she had built him out of what she needed and called it love. She had no answer for that. What she had was Bree, who noticed before Eva admitted it, and showed up before Eva asked, and never once said, I told you so, even though Miss Dorothy had, in fact, told her so. That was enough to keep going. For now, that was enough. Chapter 3. The office was dark except for the light from his monitor. Junho had been sitting at his desk for 16 hours. His jacket was on the back of his chair. His tie was loosened. There were 3 empty coffee cups lined up on the left side of his desk in a neat row because even when he was exhausted, he could not stand disorder. Outside the floor-to-ceiling window, Charlotte glittered and moved and breathed, completely indifferent to the man sitting still inside it. His phone lit up. A notification. Brianna Lewis had posted a video. He almost scrolled past it. He didn't know why he didn't. He pressed play. The video was 47 seconds long. It was shot in his own living room. He recognized the cream couch, the lamp in the corner, the painting on the wall that Eva had chosen, and he had never looked at long enough to actually see. There was music playing, something warm and upbeat, and there was a man he did not recognize laughing at something off-screen, and there was Bree with her phone pointed at the couch, and there was Eva. Eva. She was in a yellow dress he had never seen. Her hair was out, full and loose the way she wore it on weekends when she had nowhere to be. She had a plastic crown on her head, tilted slightly to the left, and she was laughing. Not the polite, careful laugh she used at his company dinners when she was performing ease for people she barely knew. This was different. This was her whole face, her whole body, her head thrown back and one hand pressed flat against her chest like she was trying to hold herself together. He watched it once. He watched it again. By the 4th time, he was not watching the man in the video. He was not listening to whatever had made her laugh. He was watching Eva's face, the way it was completely open, completely unguarded, completely alive, and something was happening in his chest that he did not have a name for. It was not a comfortable feeling. It was sharp and it arrived without warning and it did not leave. He picked up his phone and called her. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. Her voice on the recording, warm and professional. You've reached Eva James Shin. Leave me a message. He hung up. Sat still for a moment. Called again. Voicemail. He looked at the time. 1:04 a.m. He looked back at his phone. He opened Bree's post again and looked at the location tag beneath it. A club called Lumen, 12 minutes from the office. He told himself he was going to check on her. Make sure she was safe. That was all. He believed that, mostly, until he walked through the doors of Lumen and heard the music and felt the heat of the crowd and scanned the room the way he always scanned every room, quickly, efficiently, looking for the thing that mattered most, and found her. She was on the dance floor. She was still wearing the crown. The yellow dress moved when she moved. She was not dancing alone. Bree was beside her, and two other women he vaguely recognized as her colleagues, but she was not dancing for anyone either. She was just dancing, the way a person dances when they have completely stopped worrying about who is watching. Her eyes were half closed. She was mouthing the words to the song. She looked like a woman who had put something heavy down and walked away from it. He stood at the edge of the dance floor, and he could not move. He had seen Eva at charity galas in a $40,000 dress. He had seen her at his boardroom table, composed and gracious, making small talk with people twice her age who had decided within seconds of meeting her that she was impressive. He had seen her first thing in the morning and last thing at night for 2 years. He had not seen her look like this. He stood there long enough that Bree spotted him first. Bree's eyes went wide. Then her expression closed into something careful and watchful, and she leaned over and said something in Eva's ear. Eva stopped dancing. She turned. She found him immediately across the floor, standing at the edge of the crowd in his work clothes, still in his loosened tie, completely out of place and entirely unable to pretend he wasn't there. For a moment, she just looked at him. Then she crossed her arms, shifted her weight to one hip, and waited. He crossed the floor to her. People moved out of his way without him asking. He stopped in front of her, and he looked at her face, really looked, for the first time in longer than he could honestly account for, and he said the only thing in his head. Who is he? The words came out lower than he intended. More exposed than he intended. Eva looked at him for a long moment. The crown was still on her head. There was a candle on the table behind her, and it lit one side of her face and left the other in shadow, and she was the most beautiful thing he had seen in 2 years, and he had wasted 2 years. She said, "A man who made me feel like I existed." She held his gaze, steady and clear. "You should try it sometime." Bree raised her glass. The women at the table went completely silent. He drove her home. He could not have said, afterward, what music played in the car or what the streets looked like or how long it took. He was aware only of Eva in the passenger seat, not crying, not angry, just still, and of the space between them, which felt different now. Not the cold, managed distance of the past year. Something else. Something that had pressure behind it, like a door being leaned on from the other side. He pulled into the driveway. He turned off the engine. Neither of them moved. Then Eva opened her door, stepped out into the night air, and walked toward the house. She did not look back, but she left the front door open behind her. He sat in the car for 10 seconds. Then he followed her in. Chapter 4. She put the kettle on first. Not because she wanted tea. Because she needed something to do with her hands, something to occupy the 30 seconds between walking through the door and sitting down across from this man at the kitchen table, and she did not trust herself to just stand there and wait. She set 2 mugs on the counter. She did not ask if he wanted any. Junho sat down at the kitchen table. He did not loosen his tie further or take off his jacket or do any of the things he usually did the moment he came home, the immediate, efficient shedding of the workday. He just sat, hands flat on the table, waiting. Eva poured the water. She brought the mugs over. She sat down across from him, pulled her mug toward her with both hands, and looked at him. He looked back. "Okay," she said. "I'm going to talk. And you are going to sit there and actually hear me this time. Not just listen. Hear me. Can you do that?" He said, "Yes." She believed him. Partly. Enough to start. She told him about the anniversary dinner first. Not as an accusation. She had already done the version of this where it was an accusation, in her head, alone, many times. This was just the facts. The reservation. The dress. The candles she had lit and then blown out herself at 10:30 when it became clear nobody was coming home for them. The meal she ate alone. The way she had kept her breathing even when he came in at 11 and didn't ask a single question about the table that was still set, the flowers that were already dying, the woman sitting in the dark waiting for him. I didn't say anything that night, she said. I told myself you were tired. I told myself you were stressed. I told myself that marriage goes through seasons and this was just a cold one and it would turn. Junho was very still. But it didn't turn, Eva said. It just got colder. And I kept finding reasons for it that made it my fault. I thought I was asking for too much. I thought I was too needy, too loud, too much. I started making myself smaller so you'd have more room. She stopped, looked down at her mug. And you never once said, Eva, stop shrinking. You never once noticed I was doing it. The kitchen was completely quiet. The lingerie is still in the drawer, she said. She said it simply, without drama. I bought it in March. It's October. Something moved across his face. She had never seen that particular expression on him before. It wasn't guilt exactly. It was the look of a man confronting a version of events he had not let himself see clearly, and finding it much worse than he had told himself it was. He opened his mouth. I'm not finished, she said quietly. He closed it. She told him about the trip to Asheville. The morning he canceled. The way she had already packed her bag, had it sitting by the door, had looked at the weather forecast for the mountains 3 times because she was genuinely excited and genuinely hopeful. And then the 2-sentence text arrived and she unpacked the bag and put it away and did not mention it again. She told him about the night she sat him down and told him she felt invisible, and he said, I hear you, Eva, and then nothing changed. She told him how she had played that conversation back in her head for weeks afterward, trying to figure out what she had said wrong, what different words she could have used to make him actually respond. There weren't different words, she said. I said the right words. You just weren't able to meet me. She wrapped both hands around the mug and looked at him straight. I am not angry tonight, she said. I want you to hear that. I am not sitting here to punish you. I am sitting here because I love you and I am running out of ways to keep loving someone who won't let me in. And I need you to tell me, honestly, Junho, honestly, what is happening with you? Because something is. I have known something is for 18 months and you have not told me one true thing about it. The kitchen clock ticked. Junho looked at his hands on the table. Then he looked up at her. I hear you, he started, and she drew breath, and this time I mean it differently. He paused. I know I have not been present. I know I have not been the person you married. I know what this year has cost you, and I did not handle any of it the right way. He stopped. His jaw moved. I am going to fix this, Eva. I need you to give me the chance to fix this. It was not everything. It was not the full explanation she had asked for. But it was the first time in 18 months that he had said anything that didn't feel like a door closing. She looked at him for a long time. Okay, she said finally. Show me. He did. The next 3 days were careful and quiet and tentative in the way of something newly repaired that nobody wants to put too much weight on yet. He came home before 7 both evenings. He made her coffee on the 3rd morning, her order, exact, without asking, and set it on her side of the counter without comment. He sat beside her on the couch one evening, and after a few minutes, slowly, he reached over and took her hand. He didn't say anything, just held it. She let him. She did not pull away, and she did not make a thing of it. She just sat there with her hand in his and looked at the television and felt, for the first time in a very long time, that maybe there was something still here worth rebuilding. She had just started to believe that. That was when the doorbell rang. Chapter 5. The doorbell rang at 2:47 in the afternoon. Eva was in the kitchen making lunch. Junho had gone into the office for a few hours, the first time in 3 days, and she had not minded because the 3 days had been good and she trusted the feeling enough now to let him go without bracing for what it meant. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and went to the door. The woman standing on the other side was Korean, quietly pretty, with dark eyes that were red at the rims from what looked like very recent crying. She was wearing a simple gray coat. Her hair was pulled back. She had a baby on her hip, a small, round-faced baby in a blue knit hat who was chewing on the strap of her bag with complete contentment, entirely unaware of what his mother was doing standing at this particular door. Eva's hand stayed on the door handle. She did not speak. The woman looked at her. Then she looked down briefly, then back up. "I am sorry to come here," she said. Her English was careful and accented. "Is Junho home?" Eva's voice, when it came, was completely level. "He is not." The woman nodded slowly. She adjusted the baby on her hip. She looked like a person who had rehearsed something and was now finding that none of the rehearsed words were the right ones. After a moment, she said, "I am sorry. He needs to know that I cannot keep doing this alone." Eva looked at her, at the baby, at the woman's red-rimmed eyes. Then she said, "Okay," and closed the door. She stood in her hallway. The house was very quiet. She could hear the baby making small sounds on the other side of the door, and then footsteps moving away, and then nothing. She called Bree. She did not say much. She said, "I need you to come over." Something in her voice communicated everything else. Bree said, "I'm leaving now." She arrived in 11 minutes. It was a 20-minute drive. Bree did not ask questions. She came in, took one look at Eva standing in the hallway in the exact spot where she had been standing since the phone call, and put her arms around her. Eva did not cry. She stood very still inside the hug and breathed and waited for Junho to come home. He came home at 5. He walked in, set his keys on the table by the door, looked up and stopped. Eva was sitting at the kitchen table. Bree was on the couch in the living room, visible through the open doorway, not pretending to look at her phone. The kitchen felt different from every other time he had come home to it. The air in it was different, thicker, charged with something he could not immediately identify. Then he looked at Eva's face and he identified it. "A woman came to the door today," Eva said. "Korean. Pretty. She had a baby. She asked for you." She watched his face. She got her answer before he opened his mouth. It was not guilt exactly. It was something worse than guilt. It was the face of a man whose carefully managed silence had just collapsed, who had known this moment was coming and had not found a way to prepare for it, who had perhaps understood somewhere underneath everything that there was no preparation for it. "Sit down," Eva said. He sat down. What came out over the next 30 minutes was slow and halting and painful in the way of something that has been held in too long and does not come out cleanly. Her name was Suyeon. She was someone he had dated in Korea, years before Eva, before Charlotte, before any of this. They had ended things. It had not been dramatic. They had simply ended. 18 months ago, she contacted him. She was pregnant. She believed it was his. She was not certain. There was someone else, briefly, around the same time, but she believed it was his and she needed help and she did not know what else to do. He panicked. He did not tell Eva. He hired a private lawyer. He began sending money. He threw himself into work because being in motion meant he did not have to be still with what he was carrying, and being still with what he was carrying meant he would have to tell Eva, and telling Eva meant risking everything he had and had not, until recently, understood the value of. The baby was 4 months old. He had never seen the child. He did not know, still, if the child was his. Eva sat across from him and listened to all of it without moving. When he finished, the kitchen was completely silent. Bree, in the other room, did not make a sound. Eva looked at him for a long time. Then she asked him one question. "Did you think I was too fragile to know? Or were you too proud to tell me?" He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He closed it. Because the honest answer, the one sitting right at the surface, the one he could not push back down, was that it was both. He had told himself he was protecting her. He had also been protecting himself. He had been so afraid of losing her that he had chosen a silence that was losing her anyway, one day at a time, and he had kept choosing it for 18 months while she sat at candlelit tables and blamed herself. Eva stood up. She picked up her keys from the counter. She said, "I need some air." She did not come back that night. She drove until she found a hotel she had never been to, paid for a room with her own card, and went upstairs and sat on the bathroom floor with her back against the tub. She did not cry right away. She sat there for a while first, very still, letting it settle. Then she cried. Not for Suyun. Not for the baby in the blue knit hat. Not even for the secret, exactly. She cried for every morning she had woken up next to a man who was drowning in something and looked at his face and thought, what did I do wrong? She cried for every dinner. For the Asheville bag she unpacked. For the lingerie still in the drawer. For 18 months of believing she was the problem when the problem had a name and a face and a blue knit hat and had been standing on her doorstep all along. She cried until there was nothing left. Then she washed her face, got into the bed, and stared at the ceiling in the dark. Her phone had 12 missed calls. 8 from Junho. 3 from Bree. 1 from Miss Dorothy, which meant Bree had called Miss Dorothy, which meant tomorrow was going to be a lot. She turned the phone face down and closed her eyes. Chapter 6. She woke up the next morning to gray light coming through hotel curtains and the specific heaviness of a body that had cried itself empty and not slept enough. For a moment, in the first 2 seconds of waking, she did not remember. Then she did. It settled back onto her chest, quiet and solid, and she lay there and breathed through it. She ordered room service. Coffee and toast, because it was the simplest thing on the menu and she did not have the energy for decisions. She sat on the edge of the bed and ate slowly and looked at nothing in particular and tried to figure out what she was going to do. Not about the marriage. Not yet. That was too large to look at directly. She just needed to figure out what she was going to do today. Where she was going to go. How she was going to be a person who got dressed and left this room and moved through the world. She was still sitting there, toast half eaten, when her phone lit up. A news notification. She almost ignored it. The headline stopped her cold. Hotel mogul Shin's wife caught with hired man while marriage crumbles. She read it once. Read it again. Then she clicked through. The article was on a gossip blog she had seen before, the kind that presented cruelty as journalism and called it entertainment. There were photos. Derek leaving their building the night of girls' night, shot from across the street by someone who had been waiting. Eva at the club in the yellow dress, crown on her head, mid-laugh, completely unaware of the camera. A third photo of Junho walking into the club later that night, his face tight and unreadable, which the article described as a husband arriving to confront his wife's infidelity. The article called Derek her mystery man. It used the words humiliated husband and troubled marriage and sources close to the couple who had said things that were either completely fabricated or had come from someone in their immediate circle. Eva read every word. Her coffee went cold beside her. Then the comments. She should not have read the comments. She knew that even as she scrolled. People who had never seen her face before yesterday had constructed an entire version of her, who she was, what she had done, what she deserved. The words they used were the words people use when they have decided a woman deserves to be taken apart. She put the phone face down on the bed, picked it back up, put it down again. Then it rang. The number was the school's main line. Her stomach dropped before she answered. It was the vice principal, Mr. Hargrove. His voice was careful and pained in the way of someone delivering news they did not want to be delivering. There had been a complaint filed with the school board. Anonymous. It cited the blog article. It alleged that Eva's behavior and character made her unfit to work with children. She was being placed on administrative leave pending investigation. She sat on the edge of that hotel bed and listened to Mr. Hargrove explain the process and the timeline and her rights, and she heard all of it and absorbed none of it because her brain had stopped at administrative leave and could not move past it. 8 years. She had been at that school for 8 years. She had shown up early and stayed late and spent her own money on supplies when the budget ran out. She had a student last year who stopped speaking after his parents divorced, and she had spent 3 months earning his trust back one small drawing at a time. She had a student this year who came to school without breakfast twice a week, and she kept granola bars in her desk drawer and made sure he always left with something in his stomach. Those children were not a job. They were the part of her life she had never once doubted. And someone had reached their hand into the one part of everything that was solid and clean and entirely hers, and closed their fist around it. She thanked Mr. Hargrove. She hung up. She sat without moving for a very long time. She knew who had done it. She did not need evidence to know. She could feel it the way you feel the cold before you step outside. It was Chairman Park, the man who had given a speech at her wedding, who called her the best thing that ever happened to this man and raised his glass, who had been in their home for dinners, who had shaken her hand and looked her in the eye and smiled. She did not yet know all of it. She did not yet know the full shape of what he had done, how deep it went, how long he had been building toward this. She just knew, with the quiet certainty of a woman who has been underestimated her entire life and has learned to trust her own instincts, that the hand behind this was his. She was sitting in a hotel room on administrative leave from the job she loved. Her marriage was built on a secret that had been growing for 18 months. Her name and her face were on a blog that was calling her an adulteress. The man she had given everything to had chosen silence over truth, over and over, until the silence became a wall she kept walking into in the dark. She was at the bottom. She knew it. She sat inside it and let herself know it fully, because she had learned that you cannot climb out of something you haven't let yourself fully feel. Then she picked up her phone. She called Bree first. Then she called a family law attorney whose number she had never expected to need. Then she sat back and stared at the ceiling and felt something shift underneath the weight of everything. Not hope exactly. Something quieter than that. Something that said, "You are still here. Now figure out what you are going to do with that." Chapter 7. Grace called at 10 in the morning. Eva was still in the hotel room. She had not checked out. She had not decided anything yet. She was sitting in the armchair by the window in yesterday's clothes, watching the city move below her, when her phone rang and Grace Shin's name appeared on the screen. She almost did not answer. Then she did. Grace said, "I know you're not home. I know things are bad right now. I need to see you. Not for Junho, for you. Please." Eva looked at the window, at the city going about its morning, completely unconcerned. "I'm at the Marriott on Tryon," she said. Room 408. Grace arrived 40 minutes later. She was younger than Junho by 6 years, with his same stillness, but none of his guardedness. She had always been the version of the Shin family that let you see what was happening inside. Today, what was happening inside was visible from the moment Eva opened the door. Grace looked like a woman who had been carrying something that did not belong to her and had finally decided she could not carry it anymore. Eva let her in. They sat across from each other at the small table by the window. Grace had a folder in her hands. She set it on the table and put both palms flat on top of it and took a breath. "I need to tell you something," she said. "And I need you to let me get through all of it before you say anything." Eva folded her hands in her lap. "Go ahead." What Grace laid out over the next 20 minutes was not a simple story. It had layers, and it had a timeline, and it had a name at the center of it, Chairman Park, that made Eva's jaw tighten from the first mention and stay tight all the way through to the end. Park had been planning this for 2 years. Not the baby, he had not manufactured that. But the moment he found out about Soo-yeon, through a contact who knew Junho's private lawyer, he understood what he had. He reached out to Soo-yeon quietly. He presented himself as someone who wanted to help her, a woman alone, uncertain, scared, with a baby coming and a man who was sending money through lawyers instead of picking up the phone. Park was warm. Park was generous. Park told her she deserved better than to be managed from a distance, that Junho's wife deserved to know the truth, that coming forward was the right thing. He told her when to come forward. He told her exactly when time to land 3 weeks before Shin Global's largest annual investor deal closed. A deal that, if it succeeded, would lock Junho's controlling position in the U.S. division for the next decade. A deal that, if disrupted by a public scandal, would give wavering board members the excuse they needed to shift their support to Park. The blog story was his too. He had a contact at that outlet. Grace had the emails to prove it. He had arranged for someone to be outside their building the night of girls' night, knowing Bree had posted the location. He had constructed a story out of nothing, out of a harmless evening that meant nothing, and handed it to people who would make it mean the worst possible thing. The school board complaint had come from a secondary contact of his, filed anonymously, designed to isolate Eva further, to make her feel that the attack was coming from everywhere at once, so that she would be too overwhelmed to look clearly at where it was actually coming from. He had not created the fault lines in their marriage, but he had found every single one of them and pressed. Grace slid the folder across the table. Eva opened it. Inside were printed email chains, screenshotted messages, a document outlining financial transfers from a Park subsidiary account to two separate individuals Eva did not recognize, but whose roles in the timeline were annotated clearly in Grace's handwriting in the margins. Eva read every page. She read slowly and completely, the way she read her students' essays, looking for the full meaning, not just the surface. When she finished, she closed the folder. She aligned the edges neatly. She put it in her bag. She looked at Grace. "How long have you had this?" Grace looked at the table. 3 weeks. "Why didn't you tell Junho?" "I tried. He told me to stay out of it. He said he was handling it." Grace looked up. "He says that about everything. You know that." Eva knew that. "Does he know any of this?" "About Park?" "No," Grace said. "Not yet." Eva nodded slowly. She picked up her bag and her keycard. She stood up. "Good," she said. "I want to tell him myself." She drove back to the house. She did not call ahead. She pulled into the driveway and walked through the front door and found Junho sitting at the kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee and the look of a man who had not moved much since she left. He stood up the moment she walked in. She sat down. She put the folder on the table. She told him everything: Park, the emails, the Suyun timeline, the blog contact, the school board complaint, in one long, unbroken, completely steady voice. She did not cry. She had finished crying. She was on the other side of crying now, in the clear, open space that comes after, where everything is sharp and visible. When she finished, Junho sat very still. His eyes had not left her face for the entire time she was talking. Now they dropped to the folder on the table. He opened it. He read in silence. She watched his face move through things she had never seen on it: disbelief, then recognition, then something cold and decided that settled there and stayed. He closed the folder. He looked at her. "Send me everything Grace has. All of it." He paused. "Eva." His voice dropped. "I need you to trust me one more time." She looked at this man. This complicated, sealed, deeply frustrating man who had hidden a secret for 18 months and broken her heart and sent her to a hotel bathroom floor and was now sitting across from her asking her for one more chance. She had every reason to say no. She pulled out her phone and forwarded him Grace's full file. "Don't make me regret it," she said. "I won't," he said. For the first time in as long as she could remember, she believed him without having to work at it. Chapter 8. She did not know what he was going to do. He did not tell her. That would have alarmed her before. The closed door, the thing being handled alone, the managed silence. But this was different. She could feel that it was different. He was not going quiet to protect himself this time. He was going quiet the way a person goes quiet when they are about to do something that requires their full concentration and cannot afford to be distracted by anything, including their own feelings. He made one phone call from the kitchen while she was still sitting there. She heard him ask for a press conference. Not a statement. Not a release. A press conference. Tomorrow morning. He named a venue. He said the time. He hung up. Eva looked at him. "A press conference," she said. "Yes. For what?" He looked back at her. "For you," he said. "And for what's right." She did not sleep much that night. Not because things were bad. For the first time in weeks, things did not feel actively bad. She lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling and thought about everything, the whole long shape of it, from a hotel corridor in Memphis to a kitchen table at 3 a.m. to a hotel bathroom floor to right here, right now. With her husband asleep beside her for the first time in 2 nights, closer to his side of the bed than he had been in months. She reached over in the dark and put her hand on his arm. He was already awake. He turned his hand over and held hers. They did not say anything. They did not need to. The press conference was at 10 the next morning at the Charlotte Convention Center. Eva found out about it from Bree, who had seen the news alert and called her in a state of high excitement that she was barely containing. Eva drove there alone. She did not sit in the front. She stood at the back of the room where she could see everything and not be seen first. Junho walked to the podium in a dark suit with no tie. That detail struck her, no tie. She had never seen him at a formal event without one. He looked like himself, but stripped of the usual armor, which she understood immediately was intentional. The room was full. Journalists, cameras, microphones. People who covered business news, people who covered gossip, people who had printed her face next to the word infidelity and called it reporting. He did not begin with Park. He began with emails. He laid out the entire timeline, Park's contact with Soo-yeon, the coaching, the financial transfers, the blog contact, the school board complaint, with the precision of a man presenting a board report. No emotion in his voice. Just facts, one after another, each one documented, each one sourced, each one verifiable. He named Park directly every single time. He did not soften it or qualify it or use language that left any ambiguity about what had been done and who had done it. The room was very quiet. Then he set down his papers. He looked up, and the precision left his voice and something else came in to replace it. My wife, he said, is an 8th grade art teacher. She has given 8 years of her life to her students. She keeps food in her desk drawer for children who come to school hungry. She redesigns her curriculum around a student who needs something different. She is the most decent person I know. Eva stood at the back of the room and pressed her hand flat against her sternum. What was done to her reputation, Junho continued, was not an accident. It was deliberate, coordinated, and designed to cause maximum damage to a woman who had nothing to do with a business dispute she didn't even know existed. It was done to get to me. That means it is my responsibility to stand here and say so clearly, on record, in front of everyone. He paused. She should never have had to carry any of this. I should have protected her better. That is on me. I intend to spend a great deal of time making it right. He stepped back from the podium. He did not take questions. The school board cleared Eva 4 days later. The letter arrived on a Thursday morning while she was sitting at the kitchen table with coffee. It was formal and careful and said everything that needed to be said. She read it twice, set it down, and sat quietly for a moment. Then she went back to school on Monday. She walked down the corridor to her classroom and found the door covered in a banner her students had made over the weekend, 14 colors, slightly uneven letters, entirely perfect. Welcome back, Miss James. She stood in the doorway and looked at it, and the tears came before she could decide about them. She let them come. The paternity results arrived the following week. Grace called her first, which told Eva that Junho had asked her to. He was giving Eva the chance to receive the news in her own time, in her own space. The child was not his. Eva sat with that for a long time. She let herself feel the full complicated weight of it, the relief, and underneath the relief, the grief for the year that the uncertainty had quietly eaten through their marriage, and underneath that, something that was almost like peace. A door, finally, closing. Junho had already called Soo-yeon by the time Eva came to find him. He was in his study, standing at the window. He told her about it simply. He had arranged financial support for Soo-yeon and her son through a separate account, clean and private, with no conditions and no ongoing contact. Just stability for a child who had not chosen any of this. Eva had not known he was going to do that. She had found out from Grace, which meant he had not done it to impress her. That was the right thing, she said. Yes, he said. She looked at him, this man, all of him, the parts that had broken her and the parts that had chosen her and the parts that quietly did the right thing when nobody was watching. You are extremely complicated, she said. The corner of his mouth moved. I know. He looked at her carefully. Are you staying anyway? She looked back at him. Ask me again after dinner. He made dinner. It was genuinely terrible. He burned the rice, oversalted everything, and at one point set off the smoke alarm, which required both of them standing on chairs waving dish towels at the ceiling, which was not a dignified moment for either of them. She took over and rescued what could be rescued. They ate at the kitchen table, shoulder to shoulder, the window open to let the smoke out, laughing at the smoke alarm, at the burned rice, at themselves. It felt like Memphis. It felt like 40 minutes in a hotel corridor. It felt like the very beginning of something. She stayed. Chapter 9. He asked her 3 days after the dinner with the burned rice. They were sitting on the couch, nothing on the television, the kind of quiet between them that had stopped feeling dangerous and started feeling like rest. He turned to look at her and said, "I want to start over. Not the marriage, I don't want to erase what we built. I want to court you again. Properly. From the beginning." Eva looked at him. She gave it 3 full seconds of genuine thought. "Okay," she said. He drove to Memphis the following weekend. Alone ahead of her to do it right. He showed up at Miss Dorothy's door on a Saturday morning with a bunch of yellow roses and an expression that Eva, watching from Bree's car parked down the street, would later describe as a man walking towards something he genuinely is not sure will go well. Miss Dorothy opened the door, looked at him, looked at the flowers, looked back at him. "Sit on the porch," she said, and closed the screen door. She left him out there for 10 full minutes. He sat in the porch chair with the flowers on his knee and did not take out his phone or check his watch. He just sat and waited, which was, as Miss Dorothy told Eva later, exactly the right thing to do. She let him in eventually. She made him coffee he did not ask for and sat across from him at the kitchen table and looked at him the way she had been looking at him since the day Eva first brought him home, reading everything beneath the surface, measuring what she found there. Then she said, "You hurt my child." "Yes," he said. "I did." "You going to do it again?" "No," he said. "I am not." Miss Dorothy was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Coffee's getting cold," and that was that. Bree came over that afternoon and made him play spades. He lost every single round, catastrophically, in ways that suggested he had perhaps never fully understood the rules to begin with. Bree was merciless about it. He took the loss with a dignity that made Eva, watching from across the table, press her lips together to keep from smiling. The following Sunday, he went to church with them. He sat in the pew between Eva and Miss Dorothy, in a church where he was the only Korean man in the building, and everyone knew exactly who he was and what he had put Eva through, because Miss Dorothy's church was a place where people knew things. The pastor prayed over him personally, with one hand on his shoulder and considerable specificity. Junho sat with his eyes closed and his hands open on his knees, and did not flinch once. Afterward, Sister Carol from the front pew told Eva, he sat still through the whole thing. That means something. Eva knew it did. He started talking. Not all at once, it was not that kind of transformation. But in the car, in the evenings, in the small spaces between one thing and the next, things started coming out. What he remembered about his father leaving. What it felt like to be 9 years old and understand, without anyone explaining it, that the man who was supposed to stay had decided not to. The version of himself he had locked away after that, the one that needed things, that was afraid, that could be hurt, because he had decided that version was the reason people left. Eva listened to all of it. She did not rush him or fix him or tell him he was wrong to have felt what he felt. She just listened. One evening on Miss Dorothy's porch, as the sun went down and the street got quiet, he reached over and took her hand. He looked at it for a moment. Then he said, "I made you invisible. You, the most alive person I have ever known. I took all of that and I made you feel like nothing. I don't want to manage you anymore, Eva. I want to know you. I want to keep knowing you for the rest of my life. Every loud, beautiful, complicated part of you." Behind the screen door, Miss Dorothy pressed her hand flat against her chest and walked very quietly to the kitchen. Behind the hydrangea bush at the side of the porch, Bree sat down on the grass and made a sound like she had been struck. The last dinner happened on a Friday night in Charlotte. Eva's kitchen. Loud music, good food, all the people who had held things together when things were falling apart, Junho, Eva, Bree, Miss Dorothy, and Grace, who had driven up from Columbia and arrived first, and had already started on the bread before anyone else sat down. Junho danced. That was the moment Miss Dorothy conceded. He was dancing in the kitchen to a song he did not know, completely offbeat, with the full sincere commitment of a man who has decided that joy matters more than dignity, and Miss Dorothy watched him from her chair. And her face did the thing it does when she is trying not to let anyone see her smile, and she said, loudly, to nobody in particular, "He's all right." I said what I said. Bree screamed. Grace covered her face. Eva laughed from the counter with her whole body. After the food was eaten and the music was lower and everyone had gone home, it was just the two of them at the sink. Shoulder to shoulder, washing dishes the way people do when a house has become a home again. She bumped him with her hip without thinking about it. He bumped her back the same way. She laughed open and full and completely unguarded, the same laugh from the video, the one that had stopped him cold in a dark office and sent him to a club at 1 a.m. and cracked something open in him that had been sealed far too long. He turned off the faucet, dried his hands slowly. Then he turned to her and kissed her the way he should have been kissing her all along, unhurried, certain, with the full attention of a man who knows exactly what he has and has no intention of forgetting it again. When he pulled back, he looked at her face. "I see you, Eva," he said. She looked back at him, this man, all of him, everything he had been and broken and was still becoming. "I know," she said. "Don't stop." The end. And that, right there, is what it looks like when love does the work. If this story stayed with you, if you felt every up, every down, every moment Eva almost walked away, and every moment Junho finally chose to show up, then you already know this one was different. Drop a comment and tell us, did Junho deserve a second chance, or should Eva have walked away for good? We want to know exactly where you stand. And if you haven't already, like this video and subscribe, because the next story we're telling, it makes this one look calm. You do not want to miss it.